एंड वेलकम टू माय यूट्यूब लाइव सेशन। सुबह जो मैंने लाइव की थी और मैंने उस वक्त जनसत्ता न्यूज़पेपर के कुछ आर्टिकल्स डिस्कवर किए थे। अभी जो है और उसी पे मैंने चैट जीपीटी को टास्क दिया था, जिसमें मैंने बोला था कि इस प्राइस इशू को लेकर के एक डीप रिसर्च करो, और चैट जीपीटी ने वो काम कंप्लीट कर दिया है। मैं थोड़ा बहुत रीड करा था जब इसने किया, फिर मैंने सोचा कि मैं लाइव पर ही रीडिंग करूँगा। तो अब बिना समय गवाए उस पॉइंट को पढ़ते हैं। तो टॉपिक है, वाई इंडिया डज नॉट सेट मोस्ट प्राइजेज इन अ लार्ज मार्केट। India is a huge market, but it is not one simple, uniform market where the government can put one neat price tag on everything. In India, direct price setting usually exists only where a specific law gives that power and where the public interest is unusually strong, such as essential medicines, electricity tariffs, some fuel categories, and public transport fares. For most other goods and services, the state relies more on competition law, sector regulators, subsidies, quality standards, buffer stocks, and market transparency than on fixing one official price. That is why India can have a very large market and still not have the government directly setting prices for most generic medicines, consumer goods, or ordinary services. This approach has real costs for ordinary people. When markets work badly, families can face high medicine bills, sharp food price spikes, rising telecom tariffs in concentrated markets, and fuel pass through from global prices. But blanket government price setting would not be a magic cure either. It could improve affordability in the short run, especially for essentials, yet it would also risk shortages, weaker quality incentives, larger subsidy bills, more black markets or side payments, and a very heavy administrative burden in a country with a large informal and fragmented economy. Why direct price setting is limited in India? The first reason is legal design. India does not give the executive a blanket power to decide the price of every product in the economy. Price control usually comes only through targeted statutes. The Essential Commodities Act allows the center to regulate production, supply, and distribution of essential commodities to secure availability at fair prices. The Drugs Prices Control Order lets the government fix ceiling prices for scheduled medicines. The Electricity Act gives tariff setting to regulatory commissions, while telecom law gives TRAI the power to notify tariffs but also lets it keep most services under forbearance, meaning firms can set tariffs subject to oversight. This targeted structure matters because Article 19 protects the freedom to carry on trade or business subject to a reasonable restrictions by law. So broad economy wide price fixing would need clear statutory backing and careful justification. The second reason is economic. In markets where there is a workable competition, governments usually prefer to police collusion and abuse of dominance rather than set prices line by line. That is exactly the logic of the Competition Act, which prohibits anti competitive agreements and abuse of dominant position. Even in medicines, where India does impose controls, the DPCO ceiling is not a random government number. It is built from market based price data. And for telecom, TRICE says tariff reform was meant to achieve affordable prices through regulation and or competition, while most telecom tariffs today remain under forbearance, not direct fixation. In short, where competition can do the job, India often tries to regulate the prices of the market rather than replace the market altogether. The third reason is that India's large market is actually a dense patchwork of local markets, brands, grades, pack sizes, transport costs, and distribution layers. Government expert work on commodity markets has noted that agricultural spot markets often have non-transparent price discovery and diverse marketing channels, while another government-backed report on warehousing describes fragmented markets with unorganized layers that limit economies of scale. Niti Aayog has also pointed to the enormous unorganized enterprise base in India, noting 6.34 crore unincorporated non-agricultural MSMEs in the NSS 73rd round, employing 11.10 crore workers, with a large majority in the unorganized sector. In a setting like this, fixing and policing correct prices for millions of products would not just be difficult, it would be administratively overwhelming. That is why Indian policy often tries to improve price discovery instead of abolishing it. The government describes eNAM as a platform that enables transparent and competitive price discovery for agricultural trade. Likewise, the Department of Consumer Affairs monitor the daily prices of 38 essential food commodities from 555 price monitoring centers across the country. Those systems are useful, but they also show how much machinery is needed even for a narrow basket of essentials. Extending that level of surveillance and enforcement to the full universe of consumer goods and services would be a completely different order of challenge. A final reason is that many prices in India are pulled by forces that no domestic order can erase. PPAC states that petrol and diesel are market determined and non-subsidized. Domestic LPG prices are decided by oil marketing companies in line with international prices and market conditions, while subsidized LPG prices are modulated to protect consumers. The Department of Economic Affairs has also noted India's strong exposure to global commodity prices, especially crude oil. RBI has repeatedly made the same broader point in food inflation. When vegetables spike because of supply bottlenecks or fresh supply shortages, the real fix is to ease the bottleneck or bring more supply, not simply announce a lower price. In other words, large demand at home does not cancel imported inputs, whether shocks or logistics failures. What ordinary people feel when prices are mostly market led? For households, the pain is most visible when where the buyer has little bargaining power and weak information. Medicines are the clearest case. A parliamentary committee summary highlighted concerns that frequently prescribed medicines were being sold at high prices. At the same time, Jan Aushadhi medicines are officially described as being 50% to 90% cheaper than branded market alternatives, and the scheme says it has already generated savings of more than 30,000 crore rupees for citizens. Official health accounts also show that out-of-pocket spending still formed 39.4% of total health expenditure in 21-22. So when price control does not cover a medicine, or when a low-cost generic alternative is absent or not prescribed, families can quickly end up paying far more than they expected. For food and fuel, the problem is often volatility rather than one permanently high price. The Department of Consumer Affairs monitors 38 food commodities daily and uses the price stabilization fund because the government knows sudden spikes in onions, pulses, or other staples hit ordinary households hard. In cooking fuel, PPAC makes clear that non-subsidized LPG is market determined, so global energy shocks can reach domestic kitchens unless the government absorbs part of the impact through subsidy or tax policy. This means people face uncertainty. One month the bill is manageable, another month it jumps for reasons that feel far away from local incomes. In concentrated service markets, the issue is different. Prices may still be market set, but that does not always mean the market is comfortably competitive. Tria's current framework says tariff forbearance can promote flexibility, innovation, and affordable prices. But it also warns that concentrated markets can allow dominant firms to underprice smaller rivals and later recover losses through higher tariffs. TRAI's December 2025 data show private operators holding 92.61% of wireless subscriptions, the top 5 ISPs holding 98.55% of internet subscribers, and wireless ARPU at 194.57 rupees per month. That does not prove wrongdoing on its own, but it does show why ordinary consumers can feel squeezed even when the government is formally letting the market decide. If government started fixing more prices, the strongest argument for broader price setting is simple. It can give immediate relief in essential goods, natural monopoly services, or emergency situations. Administered prices can protect access and reduce anxiety for low income users. India already does this in selected areas. The tariff policy allows special support for poorer electricity consumers through subsidy and cross subsidy. Indian Railways said passengers' tickets in 24-25 carried an average concession of 43%, worth 60,239 crore rupees. Medicine show the same logic in another form. Essential drug ceilings and cheaper public generic outlets reduce the cost of treatment without waiting for perfect competition to appear. So, the good side of price setting is real and very concrete. Better affordability, more predictable bills, and social protection where markets are too harsh or structurally weak. But when government fixes prices below cost, the cost does not disappear. It moves somewhere else. The Electricity Act is explicit. If a state wants to subsidize a tariff, it it must compensate the affected utility in advance. Even so, PRS notes that cumulative DISCOM losses between 2018-19 and 23-24 were 3.4 lakh crore rupees. Public transport shows the same pattern from another angle. Low fares can be maintained but only with large budgetary support or cross subsidy. If India tried to set many more prices across goods and services, the likely result would be either a much larger subsidy bill, weaker finance for supplier firms and utilities, or both. And if subsidy payments are delayed, the system may still look cheap to the user while becoming financially unhealthy underneath. There is also a deeper long run risk. If official prices are set unrealistically low, suppliers may cut quality, reduce distribution to difficult areas, postpone investment, or move sales off the books. The World Bank has warned that restrictive price controls can push supply into black markets. Triya, in a more sector specific way, warns that distorted pricing in concentrated telecom markets can weaken competition first and hurt consumers later. At the same time, blanket pessimism is also strong. A recent academic study on Indian pharmaceutical price ceilings found short run price reductions for directly affected products and competing products, with higher quality products gaining market share. The practical lesson is not that all controls fail, but that narrow, well designed controls in clearly defined essential markets are more likely to work than economy wide micromanagement. In very simple terms, the chain usually looks like this. Government sets a low official price, short term relief for buyers, lower margin for sellers or utilities if government compensate producers. Less supply, weaker quality or delayed investment, shortages, queues or off book sales, higher subsidy bill and fiscal pressure. Case studies from India. Generic medicines. India does not fix the price of every medicine. NPPA says it fixes ceiling prices for scheduled formulations and monitors annual price increases for non-scheduled drugs, while companies are otherwise free to decide margins in non-scheduled formulations. At the same time, India has expanded the Jan Aushadhi network to 18,646 outlets as of 28 February 2026, with official claims of more than 30,000 crore rupees in savings to citizens and medicines sold at sharply lower prices than branded equivalents. This is a good example of India's preferred middle path, targeted ceilings plug, plus a public low cost alternative, not blanket price administration for the entire pharmaceutical market. Onions and pulses. Food prices are usually not fixed permanently, but they are actively stabilized. The Department of Consumer Affairs monitors 38 food items from 555 centers, and Parliament answers note that buffer stocks under the Price Stabilization Fund are released in a calibrated way to reduce volatility and discourage hoarding. In 24-25, the center procured 4.65 lakh metric tons of onion and 1033 crore rupees for intervention. This shows that India often tries to cool price spikes by changing stocks and supply, not by imposing one permanent national retail price. Tria's 2026 tariff order says most telecom tariffs remain under forbearance and that this has helped create innovative products at affordable and competitive prices. Yet the same order also warns that concentrated market can create anti-competitive risk and later price increases. Tria's December 2025 data show private operators with 92.61% of wireless subscription, the top 5 ISPs with 98.55% of internet subscribers, and ARPU at 194.57 rupees per month. This is a classic Indian case where government does not usually fix retail prices but still has to watch concentration, transparency and reporting very closely. Balanced conclusion. India's large market is not proof that the government can or should write prices for everything. The country already uses a mixed model for a reason: direct price control where the social case is strongest, independent regulation where monopoly is built into the sector, and monitored competition in the rest of the economy. The main pros of government price setting are obvious and important: affordability, predictability, anti-profiteering protection in essentials, and wider access for poorer households. The main cons are just as real: subsidy burdens, legal and federal complexity, shortages if prices are set below cost, weaker incentives for quality and investment, black market diversion, and an impossible monitoring task in a fragmented, partially informal economy. The most credible answer for India is therefore not set every price or set no price, but a selective state: protect essential goods, regulate monopoly services, strengthen competition and transparency elsewhere, and use subsidies carefully where the social return is genuinely higher than the fiscal cost. ठीक है, समझ गया. इसका कंक्लूजन भी ठीक ही ठाक था. चलो अब अखबार की तरफ बढ़ते हैं. Perfect storm. Weak enforcement and poor regulation sustain illicit liquor among the poor. India has suffered multiple mass deaths due to consuming illicit liquor across Tamil Nadu, Gujarat, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Assam, and Maharashtra. The Malwani incident in 2015, which left over 100 people dead, prompted official promises of systemic reform that never fully materialized, neither there nor elsewhere. The Pune Pimpri Chinchwad tragedy unfolded last week with more than a dozen victims of working class backgrounds in poor neighborhoods. Preliminary investigation has revealed a better than ad hoc supply chain with industry grade methanol, the toxin behind the most hooch tragedies. हूच ट्रेजिडीज का मतलब होता है कि ऐसी हूच का मतलब शायद ये है कि ऐसी शराब जो मिलावटी हो. Brought from outside the state and mixed with ethanol to produce a highly potent country liquor. The demand for licensed alcohol faces high state taxes, encouraging low-income individuals to turn to illicit liquor. On the other hand, adding industrial methanol increases the batch volume at negligible input cost, dramatically improving margins, although some people under investigation have also said during official questioning that it is not in the interest of regulator vendors to poison their customers. Nonetheless, such operations are typically semi-visible local economies that get by on tolerance rather than secrecy, and so allegations of police and local authorities complicity must be investigated. Early enforcement following most deadly incidents only arrest retail investors. Investigations into upstream suppliers and alleged kingpins have frequently proved uneven or inconclusive. Indeed, these tragedies recur due to a perfect storm of factors that are able to repeatedly come together. One major regulator gap in efforts to track methanol downstream is how easily it is pilfered and diverted pilfered and diverted for illicit liquor. Most victims are daily wage laborers, and scholars have argued that the physical toll of manual labor creates a demand for cheap relief that, together with economic precarity and addiction, outweighs the awareness of poisonous substances. Since the victims are often from marginalized communities, the sustained political will needed to implement reforms, including better methanol accounting and affordable alcohol alternatives required to break the cycle, is often lacking. In a 2024 analysis, public health experts found that higher prices for legal liquor push the poorest consumers toward the illicit market, which accounts for an estimated 40% of alcohol consumption in India. Likewise, total bans, as in Bihar and Gujarat, could deflect the market to criminal syndicates where quality control is optional and oversight is poor. Finally, legal reviews have concluded that while the big fish are rarely caught, even those arrested are largely convicted. Without these improvements, regulatory loopholes and weak enforcement will sustain illicit liquor as a public health crisis. Joy and pain. Health gains from NFHS 6 are significant, but unaddressed needs exist. When triumph and disaster arrive at the same time, it is important to celebrate but also to take stock, assess, and pivot to address the lacuna. The recently released National Family Health Survey 6 data offer such an opportunity. The data for 23-24 revealed some remarkable gains for India, but also exposed some unguarded pathways that will become disastrous if not attended to. The greatest of the gains came in the sector of child health. Stunting is down by 17%, severe wasting is down by 32%. Institutional deliveries are over at 90%, and full immunization coverage for children aged 12 to 23 months rose to over 87%. Additionally, the figures show that India's total fertility rate had established at 2.20, below the replacement level of 2.1. Unequivocally, these are gains, ones that India has been working on for decades. It is an encouraging sign that the needle has finally moved in these crucial sectors. These gains will have to be built upon without any drop in service delivery, while remaining uncompromising on access or quality of services in the public sector. However, health managers need to heed the other side of the paradigm as well. NFHS 6 indicates a dual public health burden. Obesity, in 3 years, it had grown from 22.9% to 27.3% among men, while among women from 24% to 30.7%, remains problematic, while some level of malnutrition continues, besides the onslaught of lifestyle diseases. The survey also showed a decline in exclusive breastfeeding among children under 6 months from 63% in NFHS 5 to 55.8% in NFHS 6. Breastfeeding is essential to prevent infant malnutrition. The NFHS, one of the largest cross-sectional household surveys in the world, could easily be considered the primary tool to define public policy and evidence-based governance, besides tracking development indicators. The data it generates are crucial. Other India level data from similar periods indicate similar trends. The SRS and the National Health Accounts Survey reveal the lack of focus or funds for lifestyle diseases and metabolic disorders. The danger of letting this continue will be known sooner rather than later as India progresses through a demographic transition to a grayer nation. At this stage, transformations are still possible. Setting up a comprehensive screening program for NCDs, stressing on nationwide behavior change, communication on diet and exercise, and ensuring higher taxes on sugared beverages and packaged foods are all techniques that will help reduce and limit the burden of NCDs. Bolstering health systems to tackle these NCDs, non-communicable diseases, NCDs, once they set in at every level, village, town and city, is also critical. IMEC is caught between commerce and geopolitics. The ongoing war in Iran has shattered many myths and brought to light realities that expose the structural order. Iran, which was no match for the combined military might and technological superiority of Israel and the United States, has not only withstood the military onslaught but has also retaliated in ways that were neither expected for or nor planned for. Nearly 3 months into the conflict, although a fragile ceasefire is holding, there appears to be no immediate solution to end the war or achieve the politico military objectives that Israel and the US set at its outset. While Iran has suffered major losses to its leadership, infrastructure, and military assets, the American military has also incurred unprecedented losses. A recent US Congressional Research Service report has noted that 42 US aircraft have been lost or damaged so far during Operation Epic Fury, the war with Iran, which includes fifth generation stealth fighters such as F 35. Plus, the ability to intercept Iranian missiles and drones has been severely degraded, as more than half the total inventory of Patriot, Tomahawk, Tomahawk and Terminal High Altitude Area Defense missiles have been expanded. While with more than 240 American targets reportedly hit by Iran, the conflict has shattered the myth that military superiority alone will guarantee an outright victory. Several of the asymmetric tactics employed by Iran have caught the US and Israel on the back foot. Another reality check underscored by this war is the critical importance of global choke points and how their blockade can severely disrupt the global economy. Iran, by imposing a blockade on the Strait of Hormuz early in the conflict, has virtually brought the global economy to its knees. Nearly 20 million barrels of crude oil, accounting for about a third of a global oil supplies, pass through this narrow sea passage every day. India is among the countries most affected, as it imports nearly 88% of its crude oil requirements, amounting to about 1.8 billion barrels annually. While the world while the world grapples with the blockade and works to diversify its energy sources, one thing is clear: there is an urgent need to explore and develop alternative connectivity options beyond existing trade routes, particularly maritime routes. New routes and corridors must be developed that avoid the two seas, conflict zones, and choke points. However, this realization is neither new nor have countries been idle in pursuing solutions. Transnational connectivity projects such as the International North-South Transport Corridor and Belt and Road Initiative were conceived precisely for this purpose. The INSTC was designed to bypass the Suez Canal choke point, while the overland component of BRI across Asia and Europe seeks to reduce dependence on both Malacca Strait and the Suez Canal. Another major connectivity project is India Middle East Europe Economic Corridor. Unlike the other initiatives, IMEC traverses parts of West Asia, a region that has been significantly affected by the current conflict. What is IMEC? The IMEC is a transformative and ambitious connectivity initiative that was officially announced at the G20 summit in New Delhi in September 2023. It seeks to connect India with Europe across the Arabian Peninsula by passing the traditional choke point of the Suez Canal. The project envisions a multi-modal economic corridor integrating railways, ports, highways, energy networks, and digital infrastructure to enhance trade, investment, and connectivity. Unlike conventional transport corridors, IMEC is conceived as a holistic and multi-dimensional infrastructure project encompassing sea routes, rail networks, pipelines, undersea high-speed data links, green hydrogen corridors, and transnational energy transmission grids. The proposed structure has three distinct sections. The eastern section links with India with West Asia through sea links to the United Arab Emirates. The central section consists of an overland route across West Asia, traversing the UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, and Israel, and culminating at the port of Haifa on Israel's Mediterranean coast. The western leg of the corridor is sea-based, connecting Hafia to various European ports, beyond which the continent's extensive transportation network takes over. What has happened due to the war? Soon after IMEC was announced, the war in Gaza broke out on October 7, 2023, placing the project on the back burner. Major areas of the originally envisioned corridor, particularly those involving Israel and part of Hafia, were directly affected by the conflict. Soon after the Iran Israel 12-day war in June 2025, there was a concerted effort to move the project forward. However, the ongoing conflict involving Iran has once again thrown a spanner into its execution. Key ports in the UAE, particularly Jebel Ali and Fujairah, have been repeatedly targeted by Iran, while disruptions in the Strait of Hormuz have exposed the geographical vulnerabilities of these ports. Another critical fault line exposed by the war is the deep fault lines and divergence in the positions adopted by Saudi Arabia and the UAE in the war. Both countries are key partners in IMEC, and any adversarial posture between them could prove to be a major setback for the corridor, whose success depends on smooth coordination and seamless connectivity across the region. The UAE's April 2026 announcement that it was opting out of the global oil grouping, the Organization of the Petroleum Exporting Countries, and reports of its growing strategic coordination with Israel, including the deployment of Israeli defense systems such as the Iron Beam, risk widening differences between Riyadh and Abu Dhabi. Such developments are unlikely to augur well for either regionally stability or the future of IMAC. The war in Iran has highlighted two important issues for both West Asia and IMEC. First, there is an urgent need for projects such as IMAC that can bypass conflict zones and choke points. However, for such initiatives to succeed, they must also navigate the region's geopolitical complexities, including the rapidly evolving dynamics among key partners such as Saudi Arabia and the UAE. To address the first challenge, IMEC must evolve into a broader and more flexible framework while keeping open the possibility of reverting to the original envisioned alignment once the conflict subsides. To this end, the option of developing key ports in Oman such as Salalah, Duqm and Muscat as eastern entry points could be explored, as they are located well away from the conflict-prone Strait of Hormuz. Similarly, on the western end, until the port of Hafia becomes a secure transit hub, a western spur passing through Egypt and terminating at one of its major Mediterranean ports could offer a viable alternative. Egypt already possesses the logistic ecosystem required to support IMEC, including the Suez Canal Economic Zone, 6 operational ports, and 4 industrial zones specializing in green hydrogen, liquefied natural gas, shipbuilding, and other future oriented sectors. To address the second challenge, countries such as India, which enjoy close relations and the trust of both Saudi Arabia and the UAE, will have to navigate a delicate but critical diplomatic terrain. European countries such as Italy and France, which are positioning themselves as key champions of IMAC in Europe, will also need to play an active role. The growing recognition of IMAC's strategic importance was evident during Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Europe in May 2026. While elevating their bilateral ties to a special strategic partnership, India and Italy reaffirmed their commitment to cooperate on IMAC, recognizing its transformative potential to reshape and promote global trade, connectivity, and prosperity. The bottom line is clear. The war in Iran has underscored the need for transnational connectivity projects such as IMAC that can bypass conflict zones and strategic choke points. However, for such initiatives to succeed, they must overcome the geopolitical complexities in West Asia. ये 3 टॉपिक्स पढ़ा ना मैंने अभी. चलो ये तीनों टॉपिक को टास्क देते हैं. मैंने अभी चैट जीपीटी पर मैंने अभी 3 एडिटोरियल्स पढ़े. एक पढ़ा इलिसिट लिकर के बारे में, जहां उस एडिटोरियल में ये कहा गया कि जो पुअर लोग हैं वो इसकी तरफ ज़्यादा रुख कर रहे हैं, क्योंकि जो लिकर दुकानों पर मिलती है वो कॉस्टली होती है। इसके ऊपर एक रिसर्च करके दे मुझे। सभी एंगल्स एक्सप्लोर करना और डेफिनेशन और एक्सप्लेनेशन का जो टाइप है वो इंग्लिश में रखना और पैराग्राफ के फॉर्म में आंसर करना और पढ़ने में मज़ा आए इस तरह से लिखना। दूसरा जो एडिटोरियल मैंने पढ़ा वो अरे यार NFHS 6 के बारे में पढ़ा, जिसमें एक अच्छी बात और एक चिंता करने वाली बात थी। अच्छी बात ये है कि चाइल्ड न्यूट्रिशन में इम्प्रूवमेंट हुआ है। स्टंटिंग और वेस्टिंग के नंबर्स भारत के बच्चों में कम हुए हैं, लेकिन चिंता की बात ये है कि अरे यार इंडिया में ओबेसिटी मेल और फीमेल दोनों में बढ़ रही है। साथ ही ब्रेस्ट फीडिंग के परसेंटेज में गिरावट आई है और इसके बारे में भी रिसर्च कर और तीसरा रिसर्च कर आईमैक के बारे में, ट्रांसनेशनल पाथवेज क्या है, ये क्यों ज़रूरी है और आज के कॉन्टेक्स्ट में इसकी बात क्यों हो रही। अरे यार अब मैंने रिसर्च चालू कर दी है इन 3 आर्टिकल्स जो मैंने पढ़ी है। अब ये जैसे ही रिसर्च कंप्लीट करेगा तो अगली लाइव में पहले मैं इसी के साथ शुरुआत करूँगा। टिल देन थैंक यू and stay connected for more such updates.